Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode is designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. Welcome, gentlemen. Today I have such a terrific story for you, something that I had a chance to witness firsthand regarding one of the men in our community, one of the listeners of this show, regarding how he showed up in the face of fear in a way that so few men are willing to do. And, there are three typical ways that I see men reacting in the face of fear. And the third path is the one chosen least often, which this man took. And I'm going to get into the story. I'm going to get into those three paths in just a few moments here. But before I do, I wanted to share with you something cool that I have been doing over this past week that I thought you might be interested in. This week, I'm doing a mindful practice, which I call mindful meals. And this is something that I learned when I did my 10-day silent meditation in Hawaii, almost 5 years ago now. I was there in 2016 in March. So mindful meals, here's what I do twice a day. So I only have 2 real meals a day, lunch and dinner. For breakfast, I do this bulletproof coffee, which has a lot of calories. It's got like 500 calories. I put a scoop of collagen protein, a scoop of whey protein, a tablespoon of MCT oil. It's bulletproof spray octane oil. And then a big hefty dose, like a heaping tablespoon of grass-fed ghee. Throw it all in a blender. And guys, if you haven't had something like this before and you like a creamy, frothy like latte, this will blow a latte out of the water. And it's got all the nutrients. With all those healthy fats, it helps to metabolize the caffeine over a longer period of time so you don't get those crazy whacked out jitters, which I used to like. But I remember when I would have like a Starbucks cup of coffee, I would do it black. And I was in the office back when I was in my corporate days, felt like I could fucking tip over file cabinets. I was so spastic. This has a much longer, nicer duration to it, smooths out the edges. Anyway, I digress. For my 2 real meals a day, which are lunch and dinner where I sit down and have food, I've chosen to do mindful meals where I am doing nothing but eating. That's it. For 15 or 20 minutes, I put my plate down in front of me. I shut down my computer, my phone. I'm not reading anything. I'm not listening to anything. I'm not watching any television. I'm not even engaging in my own thoughts. Here's the deal. There was a point in time in my life where I needed more space in my life to think about my thoughts. Now I've realized that I need space in my life to not engage in my thoughts because my thoughts are quite often ridiculous. It's quite often my inner critic, quite often the very things that are causing me anxiety, causing me to not have peace. So instead, for these 2 times a day where I eat my meals, I sit down and I focus 100% of my attention on what's right in front of me, and that's the meal. Now, I remember during my 10 days of silent meditation where you don't talk to anybody. You don't even make eye contact with anybody. You relinquish your phone for 10 days. There's no exercise. There's no working out. You're not reading anything. You're not journaling. All you are doing is sitting with yourself. And I remember it was the first time in my life when we would have our meals that I was just engaging in the meal. I wasn't talking to anyone. I wasn't doing anything. It brought focus and attention to how many chews I was taking. It showed me how often I just eat anxiously. Showed me how many times I used to take like 3 or 4 bites of something and then just swallow it, like unchewed. You're like kind of like it's like a snake swallowing an egg, right? Like letting your body do so much extra work versus breaking it down. When I finally slowed down in that environment, it actually had a lasting effect on me. Like these last 5 years, I've chewed much more deliberately. I've recognized when I'm full, and I don't keep bulldozing past it. And the reason why I've chosen to do these mindful meals now is because I've found some of these cravings creep up. Cravings for sweets, cravings to eat past my point of being satiated. Like there's a difference between eating to satiation and then eating to when your belly feels like full and stretched and it's about to implode. There's a difference. And I was finding that my mechanism for stopping eating was getting to that place of just like discomfort, which is well past the point of when I need to be satiated. And it was having an effect on, I found myself just like overconsumed with how much time I was thinking about food or wanting to eat. So instead, I'm now sitting down and before I even bite into my food, like I bring the plate to my face, I smell it. And it's just like, wow, take a look at take that in, this beautiful omelet I've created for myself, or the bacon, and just smelling it and feeling that gratitude for all of the things that had to happen for it to end up on my plate. And each of the chews that I take, just elongate the experience. And I found in doing this, it settled me down, not just during my meal, but for the hours after. And I don't leave the table feeling bloated. I don't feel lethargic either. I've started to feel a much deeper sense of peace, which is carried forward afterwards. So I thought that you might be interested in doing your version of mindful meals a couple times a day. Try it for a week. See what happens for you. Okay, let's get back to the topic at hand today, which is the 3 different ways that you can react to fear and the path least traveled on that journey. So I want to start by sharing with you a story from a man who we are going to give him the name that we always give the people we tell stories about on this podcast, where we don't want to reveal their identity. And let's just take a moment to see how well you know our show. What is the name I'm about to give this man? His name is Rick. That is our placeholder name. Okay. So Rick is a longtime listener of the show. I think he jumped on board about a year and a half ago. We've just finished our 200th episode. I think this is our 201st. So we've been in business for about 2 years now. So he's been there since near the very beginning. And he's one of the men that expressed interest over this past year in joining the next round of the Great Man Mastermind, right? The group of 20 men who decide to make inner work, living your great man, the number one priority in your life, alongside like your family and your work, for the next 12 months. Okay. Now, I've had a lot of these conversations with interested folks who are thinking about making that next leap in their lives, right? So I've had a chance to see how many different men have come to the table, really curious about taking that next step. It is a big commitment, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, time-wise, financially-wise. And I've had a chance to witness all the different reactions and fears that pop up when a man is really, truly considering taking it to the next level. I've been there before too, guys. But this interaction with Rick really took the cake in a powerful way. So Rick and I, when a man has expressed serious interest, like this man has, he emailed me 6 months ago before I was even talking about the mastermind. And he was just like, hey, when you do the next one, I want to know about it. And then when I started talking about it on the podcast, he reached out again. That shows me worthy inquiry, right? That's a term that I learned in the meditation space. Worthy inquiry, someone who has shown up over a period of time, who's reached out multiple times to express interest. So I was like, okay, this is a man who I'm going to dedicate 45 minutes with. We're going to set up a Zoom call, sit down, and talk about, is this the right next path for him? So we set up this one-on-one time. And I'm seated in front of my laptop, got my microphone headset on just the way I'm doing here. I've got the webcam on, ready to rock. And when he dials in, he doesn't have his video camera on. He's taking off an audio phone call in his car while he's driving. So he's not 100% engaged. He's driving on the road, and he recognizes that I'm on video, but he hasn't, made the effort to sit down and be fully engaged. And so that was a trigger point for me. And, if I was on my game 100% that day, I would have stopped the call and I would have said, we're going to reschedule this for when you have undivided attention, because this is that important. But I didn't. I let it go. We went on to have a great conversation. This man, Rick, is quite ready for the next steps in his life, right? He's tried a few other communities. He's tried some inner work. He's tried some places that haven't worked out for him. He knows that he can only go so far by reading or listening to podcasts. He is a disciple of the financial independence movement and has been saving his money. So he is quite intentional in his life. He's made some really thoughtful choices, but he knows that he's kind of still out there on his own. He hasn't found his tribe. He hasn't found his community. And so when we got to the end of the conversation where I revealed what the investment would look like, not just the financial investment, but the time and the energy and these kinds of things, it's shocked the system. Because this is a no joke kind of investment. It's a meaningful investment of time and money. And it's a situation that I've had a chance to see a lot of different guys react to, where all of a sudden when it gets real, the time commitment, the financial commitment, then I see that monkey mind activate. And what Rick had a chance to tell me was, this is something I feel like I know I should be doing. It's a big investment. I got to go talk to my wife about it. And I could feel some backpedaling. And he'd said, if it's not this year, maybe it's next year. That's a thing I hear a lot from guys who are just kind of grappling with the emotions of the moment. And I said, okay. So the next step, my friend, is for you to reach back out to me and let me know with some oomph what the next move is from your standpoint. So a few days go by. And on New Year's Eve, this was when I got his message. It was New Year's Eve. I get this text message that comes through, kind of sloppily written, that says, hey man, I've been thinking about this. I don't think I could do it. And, the financial thing is just not going to be working out for us in this period of point in time. I don't know if I can make it work. There's a lot of hurdles to jump through. Long story short, it was a no. And I sat back and I looked at it and I was like, nah, Rick. Not fucking good enough. So I sat down a few days later in front of my camera, turned it on, and I sent him this 5-minute video. And I said, Rick, I am responding to you with a video message to your text message because it's time to set a new standard of interaction here between us. I need you to know that I don't just jump on a phone call, a Zoom call for 45 minutes with just anybody. Right? I'm in the process here of running a community with hundreds of men who are constantly reaching out, asking for time, asking for energy, asking for mentorship, asking for guidance. And I don't have the capacity, even though I have the desire, to dedicate that kind of time unless someone is truly interested in taking that next step. And when you showed up, and you weren't 100% fully engaged, you didn't create the space or the time to be one-on-one the way that I was here, because we're talking about some of the most important life-changing shit that could be the gateway for everything you are asking for in your life about living purpose, finding community. I'm holding that standard, and if you want to continue interacting with me or in this community, you've got to show up at that standard as well. And I want that in our interactions, even in your follow-up, because that text message you sent me didn't meet that standard, not by a long shot. And I said, brother, I see you. I've seen how you've shown up in some of your better moments. I saw how you tracked me down and over a period of time have showed a dedicated interest in joining this community. I've listened to the questions you've asked. I've seen how intentional you are in your financial independence lifestyle. You've opened my eyes with some of the dialogues around some of my blind spots in the most beautiful ways. But this, the way that I saw you showed up, not good enough. So now the ball's in your court, and I want to hear back from you. And these are pivotal moments, guys. I have learned over the past number of years in making invitations to men to step into another standard of being, where I get a chance to see into the soul of a man, where he is, right? What he's capable of. And it's a beautiful thing because the coaching, most guys don't recognize this, but the coaching begins during those conversations before they've even invested their money, right? This is my calibration process, a rite of passage to see if a man is ready to cross the threshold to become part of a community like this, where other men have already done their own crossing of the threshold to decide this is the thing that they are going to do. Because once they've crossed that threshold, I don't have to worry about a damn thing about how they show up, right? Now we can do the work. I don't have to fuck around with guys who are half measured, half invested. So this was Rick's chance to show me what he was made of. I get a video from Rick, 9 minutes long. And when he turns on the camera, he said, Dominic, this is the first time I've ever done a video message like this before. I want to thank you for calling me out on my bullshit. I didn't show up. I didn't take that call seriously. I didn't honor your time. I didn't respond back to you as my best self. It was sloppy. And there are so few people in my life. No one, he said, no one has ever called me out on my bullshit in my life the way that you just did. And I showed my wife, I let my wife listen to your message because I know this is something that I need. And it catalyzed a conversation that she and I had that was one of the deepest conversations that we'd ever had. And she is now supporting me on this path if I want to take it with this meaningful investment. But Dominic, and guys, this is where my respect for this man grew like on tilt. He said, but Dominic, I'm afraid. I'm afraid because I've made investments in myself in the past that haven't worked out the way that I thought it would. I've made investments in other communities of men where I thought it was the place, my home, but then I felt lost. I felt like just another number. I felt like just another guy who was in someone's engine, just trying to make a bunch of money, and I felt lost, unseen. And what I heard from him in that particular comment is that he had lost trust in himself to discern, right? Like what that next step was because he'd made a couple of false starts. I know what that feels like, guys. I wrote about that in my book, On Purpose Leadership, right? One of the key reason why people will resist your leadership is because they don't trust. And one of those layers of distrust is distrusting themselves. Rick, through his previous experiences, distrusted himself to discern, am I in the right place for myself? And guys, like I know what that feels like. I've made bad investments before in my time and my energy and trusting my personal well-being to people who are only out to take my money, only out to further their own cause. I know what that feels like, and it can feel so discouraging, and I can feel ashamed. You know what? I know what that feels like. But Rick had the balls and the courage to show me his hand, to show me that part of himself that he was afraid. And he must have said a number of other different times throughout the course of his video, this beautiful video that caused me to stop everything I was doing and lean in. And I had the smile plastered on my face the entire time because I witnessed true greatness from this man in that moment. He must have said that I'm afraid or I'm scared a half dozen to a dozen times. And he just started to reveal these different layers where he was like, am I going to step up into a group of guys that maybe I'm not worthy of? How do I know that I'm not just, how do I know that I'm worthy of this group? I can't tell you how many other men in all walks of their life and their professions who are successful, who are capable, share that same fear, but are so afraid to express it. But I've heard it in so many formats, in so many different ways. Rick was one of the few who brought that forward in this way so quickly. And so that leads to the three different ways that I see men react, or three different ways that men tend to handle fear. And the third path is the least traveled, but this is the path that Rick took. The first path is a man will react to fear. The second path is he will act in the face of fear. Reacting typically happens when you're triggered, when you're scared, when you're frightened, and you eject, right? It is not a conscious decision. It's just stimulus, response, stimulus, response, stimulus, response, right? One of the reasons why we're doing the cold shower challenge in this month of the Mentally Tougher Man Challenge, these 31 days, is for that specific moment where that icy cold water hits your skin and blasts you, shocking you, causing your entire body to be like, get out of here, right? Your mind to say, I can't take it. But instead of reacting, trigger, response, just like you would do in almost any scary situation in life, we take a deep breath, we settle in, ground our feet, and we allow the discomfort to dissolve. Not entirely, but we can stand in far longer than an initial blast and eject. Right? And I've had so many illuminating conversations with men around this next stage of formalizing inner work when they get to that moment, that make or break moment of, are you ready to make those meaningful changes, to pursue your purpose, to find that tribe, that they react in that moment and eject, shut down, let their mind get triggered, and then rationalize all the reasons why they can't do it. The second is the acting part, right? Acting in the face of fear. This typically comes from when you have gotten to that place where you know on a deeper level what the right next move is. Right? This is when your great man can take over, see the situation for what it is, and from a place of resolve, you can act clearly, confidently, with intention, right? Not unconscious, highly conscious. But there are so many situations where fear gets knocked up inside of you and you don't have a clear path of action. You don't know what that right next road is. So here's the third path, and the one that Rick took that I respect and honor so highly. The third path is leaning in. Gentlemen, when fear strikes, it's best not to react or to act, especially if you don't know what the path is, but it is critical to lean in. What Rick did in his video to me was he came back, he stood tall, he leaned into the discomfort and said, Dominic, this is what I'm feeling. I know I want this. I know I need this. I'm sure I could make it happen, but I'm afraid. And here's all of the reasons why. And I'm not going to lean too far out over my edge and fall off of it. And I'm no longer going to retreat because you called me on my bullshit on that already. But I'm going to lean out over my edge, lean in here, and stay in this situation until I know the right next move for me. How fucking powerful is that, guys? One of the principles that we have in the mastermind, and I write about this in my book too, principles, right, are those anti-drift devices, the things that you can grasp onto, that shorthand to guide your life, those values that when you hit a fork in the road or when you hit a dead end, that's the thing that gives you clarity. One of our key principles, we have three principles, and one of the key ones is, I will lean out over my edge in everything I do. And that is borrowed from David Dada in The Way of the Superior Man. I lean out over my edge constantly in everything I do. And that's what Rick is doing. We haven't made a decision yet. Rick doesn't even know I'm recording this episode right now. I'm going to let him know after I finish hitting the stop and publish button. Because he's given not only himself, not only me a gift, he's given every one of you a gift, an example of what to do when fear strikes and you are no longer allowing yourself to react. You do not yet have clarity around what the right next action is. You lean in. So now I have an invitation for you to work on leaning into the face of fear to find your power and resourcefulness in the most uncomfortable of moments. Join us for a free workshop that I will be facilitating for a group of men, hundreds of men around the world on January 27th called Unshakable, Building Your Capacity for Mental Toughness. Now, this is a workshop for men only, and the key takeaways are going to be 3 immediate benefits of building mental and emotional fortitude, right? Like leaning into the face of fear. Number 2, learning why mental toughness doesn't happen on its own, how you need to cultivate it. And number 3, I'll be giving you tangible practices to expand your mental and emotional capacity. so that you can do what Rick did. In those situations in your life where you get triggered, you get cut off in traffic, you get interrupted by your partner, your spouse, so they do that thing that knows that they tweak you. And instead of running away, and when you don't have the clarity to make the right next choice, you can take a deep breath and lean in. I'm going to link in the show notes the invite to Unshakable. Join us for that workshop. It's going to be on Wednesday, January 27th, 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. New York City, East Coast time. Again, I'll link that in the show notes right at the top so you can go and check that out. We'll see you there.